The power doesn't die with a scream, it exhales. A long, tired breath that never comes back in. 1 second, the refrigerator hums like a loyal animal. The next, it's a cold metal coffin. The silence lands heavy, unnatural, like pressure in your ears before a storm. People don't panic yet. They wait. They stare at dark screens. They flip switches that already know they're dead. That first minute is mercy, the last moment before the world starts subtracting things from you. Then the cold creeps in. Not temperature. Absence, the kind that crawls into the bones when systems stop pretending to care. Elevators freeze between floors. Traffic lights blink once and surrender. You feel it in your gut before your brain catches up. This isn't a glitch. This is subtraction. The grid didn't stumble. It bled out. The first thing taken is movement. Not by soldiers, not by law, by physics. Roads choke. Fuel evaporates into panic. Distance becomes a wall you can't climb. Your city shrinks to the radius of your legs. Cars become monuments to bad timing, steel coffins parked at strange angles. Mobility was freedom, and freedom just lost its pulse. People think collapse is loud. It isn't. It's quiet enough to lie to yourself. You hear shouting, crying, glass, but those are symptoms. The real change is the sound that isn't there. No engines, no compressors, no background hum of civilization pretending to breathe, just wind and the animal noise of humans remembering their meat. That's when hunger wakes up. Not the dramatic kind. The slow one, the accountant. The kind that starts doing math behind your eyes. You start counting cans, counting hours, counting exits. You realize food isn't food anymore. It's time. And time is suddenly expensive. Fuel vanishes before anyone admits it's gone. Not stolen, absorbed, burned in panic, drained into generators that scream all night like dying insects. A full tank becomes a confession, a beacon, a target with wheels. Movement now equals exposure. You learn that stillness is camouflage. Smart survivors don't hoard motion. They bury it. They drain tanks early, hide fuel where noses can't find it, and desperation won't look. They stop driving. They let their legs relearn gravity. Distance becomes patience instead of speed. You trade miles for minutes. You trade speed for silence. The city starts teaching brutal lessons. Sound travels differently without traffic. Light betrays you through curtains. Heat leaks like blood. Every choice leaves a signature. You learn that survival isn't about having things. It's about not being seen having them. And that's when the truth lands heavy. Once movement is gone, the hunt begins. Not for resources, for people who still have them. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see where the survivors are watching from. And hit subscribe while you're here. Hunger never kicks the door in. It knocks politely and waits for you to answer. At first, it feels like discipline. Skipping a meal, tightening the belt, telling yourself it's efficient. Then, it becomes a whisper behind the eyes. A pressure behind the ribs. A quiet rearranging of priorities. You don't feel pain yet. You feel negotiation. Your body starts bargaining without consulting you, and that's when food stops being nourishment and becomes leverage. The first wave strips the shelves clean. The second wave strips the apartments. The third wave strips the people. Not because they're monsters, but because biology doesn't care about your ethics. Calories turn into authority. Whoever controls them dictates behavior. You see it in the eyes first. The shift from politeness to calculation. Neighbors start smiling too long, asking questions they already know the answers to. You eating okay really means how much do you have left? Food stops being quiet. Cans rattle like guilt. Plastic crinkles like confession. Heat becomes a signal flare. The smell of something warm crawls through walls, through vents, through memory. Cooking announces survival to everyone within reach. That's when people learn to eat cold, to eat dry, to eat things that don't advertise their existence. Flavor becomes suspicious. Steam becomes dangerous. You start understanding that abundance is a scent. It leaks through habits, through routines, through timing. People notice patterns even when they don't know they're watching. Same hour, same light, same sound. Routine is comfort, and comfort gets harvested. You don't just hide food. You scramble your behavior so nothing about you becomes predictable. Hiding food isn't about clever containers or fake walls. It's about psychology. You bury calories where attention doesn't go, inside boredom, inside inconvenience, inside places that require effort to remember. You break the association between hunger and relief. You stop letting your body announce its needs on a schedule. Trash becomes testimony. A peel, a wrapper, a stain, all of it tells a story you didn't mean to tell. You learn to erase yourself. You learn to carry waste away from where you sleep. You learn that water sloshing in a bottle is louder than a voice, that even thirst can betray you if you let it. The hardest part isn't the hunger, it's the clarity that comes with it. Hunger sharpens thought like a blade against bone. You start calculating everything. Distance, weight, effort, risk. You notice how quickly morals soften when stomachs shrink. You see how easily good people rehearse excuses. Survival isn't loud, it's efficient. You also learn something dangerous. Eating buys time, and time buys thinking. And thinking keeps you from becoming a thing that only reacts. That's the line, the thin one. On one side are people who still decide. On the other are people who only respond. The tragedy isn't that people steal food. It's that they stop seeing food as something to protect life and start seeing it as a way to control it. That's when the shape of society collapses inward. Not with fire, with quiet math. And while others guard cupboards and count cans, you guard something heavier, the ability to think past the next hunger. Because the moment you stop thinking, you stop being a person. And that's when the real starvation begins. Pain rearranges the hierarchy faster than hunger ever could. Hunger negotiates. Pain commands. The moment bodies start failing, authority shifts to whoever can slow the collapse. A man with a weapon can threaten today. A person with medicine decides who sees tomorrow. When pharmacies go dark, treatment becomes mythology. Infection stops being an inconvenience and turns into a verdict. Every wound starts ticking, and time becomes the only currency that matters. Medicine doesn't disappear quietly. It gets hunted, stripped from shelves, pockets, backpacks, memories. People grab names they recognize and ignore what they don't. Pills become talismans, plastic gods rattling in pockets. It doesn't matter what they do, belief does the work. Hope becomes a narcotic, and people will trade dignity, safety, even loyalty for a promise written on a label they can't read anymore. The mistake is thinking medicine belongs in one place. Cabinets get searched, bags get emptied, but real survival scatters value, broken down, disguised, separated from meaning. You stop storing things where they look like what they are. You separate function from form. You let usefulness hide inside the ordinary, the forgettable, the boring. You understand that visibility is the enemy long before hunger ever is. You also learn that medicine isn't magic. It's physics wearing compassion. Clean surfaces, still hands, controlled pressure, time bought through patience instead of panic. The body wants to repair itself if you stop sabotaging it. Most people don't know that. They rush, they poke, they interfere. And interference turns minor damage into permanent loss. You learn to move quietly through suffering. Not because you're cruel, but because attention is lethal. Helpers attract gravity. Pain is loud, and loud things get surrounded. So you help sideways, indirectly. You leave things where they'll be found instead of handed over. You teach without teaching. You let people think they solved it themselves. There's a moment when someone realizes you know more than you're saying. You see it in their eyes. Hope sharpening into expectation. That's the dangerous moment. Because expectation turns into entitlement fast, and entitlement turns into anger when reality refuses to cooperate. You learn to dull that moment, to look smaller than you are, to seem unsure even when you're not. Eventually you understand that healing makes you visible, and visibility is a debt collectors never forget. Once people know you can stop pain, they come bleeding. Not just from wounds, but from decisions, regrets, mistakes they want you to undo. And when you can't, they don't blame the chaos. They blame you. That's when the lesson lands hard. Survival isn't about saving everyone. It's about not becoming a resource. Because the moment they stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as a solution, you're already being consumed. And in a world like this, being useful is often more dangerous than being alive. Silence stops being empty the moment people start talking. At first, it sounds harmless. Whispers, rumors, fragments drifting through stairwells and alleys. But information doesn't drift. It hunts. It moves faster than hunger because it doesn't need calories, only mouths. In collapse, words travel lighter than bodies and cut deeper than knives. By the time you hear something twice, it's already mutated. Most of what spreads isn't knowledge. It's comfort dressed as certainty, half-truths wearing uniforms, directions that lead nowhere but feel good to follow. People don't want accuracy. They want permission. Permission to move, permission to take, permission to believe they're not already too late. Lies give them that permission without the weight of responsibility. This is where control sharpens into a blade. The one who shapes the story shapes the crowd. A whispered safe zone can drain a neighborhood in hours. A fake broadcast can redirect 1,000 desperate bodies like livestock through a gate that doesn't exist. Radios stop being tools and start being weapons. Phones turn into traps that hum with false hope. Screens glow in the dark like artificial suns, burning retinas with reassurance while the world rots underneath. You survive by starving the noise. You stop chasing updates. You stop reacting. You listen the way predators do. For rhythm, not words. You track movement, not meaning. Who packs bags at dawn? Who leaves at night? Who suddenly speaks with confidence after days of fear? Confidence is a flare. People who know the least tend to speak the loudest because silence terrifies them. Information isn't power. Timing is. Knowing when to speak, when to disappear, and when to let someone else test the ground first. You never challenge a lie in public. Public truth gets you surrounded. You let falsehoods burn their own oxygen. You watch who follows them. You count the seconds between rumor and consequence. You learn that silence isn't emptiness. It's camouflage. The less you say, the more others project. They fill the gaps for you. They tell themselves stories where you're harmless, confused, irrelevant. That's survival. Being underestimated keeps you unmeasured. You ration information the way others ration food. Small portions, carefully placed. Just enough to redirect danger away from your path. You let people argue over scraps of data while you move quietly between conclusions. Uncertainty becomes your shield. People fear what they can't map. Eventually, you notice the shift. Eyes linger longer. Questions come wrapped in politeness. Someone repeats your words back to you, testing the weight. That's when you know you've been noticed. And being noticed in a collapsing system is how you get cataloged. Because once they know you can see clearly, really see, you become valuable. And value attracts ownership. Ownership attracts control. Control demands obedience. That's the chain. So you stay slightly wrong, slightly late, slightly unsure. You let others think they're ahead while you watch the ground beneath them crack. You keep your clarity quiet and your presence forgettable. In a world where information moves faster than truth, invisibility becomes the last form of freedom. And freedom, once noticed, doesn't stay free for long. Walls don't protect you, they negotiate. Every surface is a contract with physics, and physics never signs long-term agreements. Heat escapes. Sound leaks. Light betrays. Shelter isn't safety, it's delay. A pause between exposure and consequence. The mistake people make is believing a roof means ownership, when in reality it's just borrowed time with interest. The first instinct is possession. My place. My corner. My roof. That instinct gets people buried inside what they tried to defend. Real shelter isn't a location, it's an option set. It's angles, exits, shadows, and timing. The ones who survive understand that a building is not protection. It's a temporary negotiation with wind, eyes, and attention. The loud shelters die first. Generators cough like wounded animals. Fires pulse like open wounds in the dark. Warmth radiates. Light bleeds. Sound carries. Every calorie of heat announces itself to anyone still counting calories. Warmth is a signal flare in a starving world. Someone will always decide your comfort is inefficiently distributed. So you learn to cool your existence. You stop fighting the cold and start blending with it. You let temperature drop just enough that your presence dissolves into the background. You learn that darkness isn't absence of light. It's control of direction. You don't eliminate glow. You aim it. You bend it away from windows, away from angles, away from curiosity. Sound becomes the real enemy. Footsteps echo differently depending on surface and ceiling height. Breath changes pitch in enclosed spaces. Even fabric makes noise when the world goes quiet. You learn how to move like weather, present but not announcing itself. You stop thinking in rooms and start thinking in acoustics. A good shelter erases you. A bad one advertises you. The difference is often measured in habits, not walls. Where you sit, where you sleep, where you store heat and light and smell. You rotate spaces the way animals rotate grazing ground, never exhausting one place, never leaving a pattern that can be tracked. You never sleep where you eat. You never eat where you store. You never store where you rest. Layers of separation become layers of survival. You stop nesting and start passing through. The goal isn't comfort. The goal is forgetting by others that you exist at all. Walls eventually turn into liabilities. They trap sound. They trap scent. They trap you. A structure that feels solid today becomes a funnel tomorrow. You treat buildings the way you treat skin. Temporary, protective, but never something you trust to stop a blade. You plan exits before you need them. You test them quietly. The moment a place starts to feel safe, you know it's time to leave. Safety breeds patterns. Patterns get noticed, and once someone starts measuring your space, counting your doors, your windows, your habits, it's already over. The calculation has begun. Shelter isn't where you hide. It's how lightly you touch the world before moving on. Because the ones who survive aren't the ones with the strongest walls. They're the ones who leave no proof they were ever there. It doesn't arrive with force. It arrives with courtesy. A question asked gently, a favor framed as cooperation. A hand on the shoulder that stays a second too long. Community forms the way mold does, slowly, invisibly, feeding on what's already soft. Obligation grows where choice used to be, and people start calling it stability. This is how ownership begins without chains. At first it feels like relief. Decisions get lighter when someone else carries them. Schedules appear, roles settle. You're told where to be, when to sleep, what matters today. It feels like order returning. Like safety wearing a uniform. You tell yourself it's temporary, just until things normalize. That lie is comforting. Comfort is dangerous. The shift happens quietly. You stop asking why and start asking when. When do we eat? When do we move? When do I speak? Your internal compass gets outsourced. The group doesn't need to threaten you. It just needs to reward compliance. You're praised for fitting, corrected for friction. The cage is padded, and that's what makes it effective. Soon, you're not choosing anymore. You're waiting. Waiting for instruction, waiting for permission, waiting for approval. You measure your value by usefulness, not by will. You learn which thoughts to keep to yourself, which questions make people uncomfortable, which ideas slow the machine. Silence becomes safer than truth. That's when identity begins to thin. Your name turns into a function. Guard, runner, helper, body. Your worth is calculated in hours and output. You stop imagining futures that don't involve the group. You stop planning. Planning implies choice. Choice implies disobedience. The system doesn't need to punish you. It just needs to keep you busy enough not to notice yourself disappearing. Waiting becomes a posture. People die that way. Standing upright, eyes open, souls folded small to fit inside rules they never wrote. The body lives. The person fades. It's efficient, clean, almost merciful, no blood, no noise, just quiet compliance. Real survival begins where obedience ends, not rebellion, awareness. You keep a corner of yourself unregistered, a thought that isn't shared, a decision you don't announce. You obey on the surface and remain sovereign underneath. You smile and nod and keep a private map no one else can read. You learn that freedom isn't loud, it's internal. It's the ability to choose even when no one is watching. Especially then, you protect that space like a vital organ. You don't argue for it. You don't explain it. You simply don't surrender it. Because the world doesn't collapse when the lights go out, it collapses when people stop deciding who they are. And tomorrow is always watching, waiting to see if you still remember.